So, you're all part of the same mercenary company.
Oh, fuck this! Nope, I'm leaving.
What?
No,
No. Come on, Alex. Welcome to House of Bards. I'm Beth.
And I'm Alex.
And yeah, game starting cliches. We're a podcast about shit. What are we a podcast about?
Role playing.
Role playing. Yes, thank you. Had a brain fart. But yeah, so this was requested.
I believe it was requested, although it being shoved into our big tank of ideas, I have no idea who it was requested by. No. Possibly we should have a column in the table for keeping track of that.
Yes, we may have to. But yeah.
That said, if you do want content generated by you and attributable to you to be put into the podcast, at some point we'd probably like to do some kind of like Q&A episode, wouldn't we?
Yes, that would
where
be
we could
awesome.
Answer all of your questions. But obviously, in order for that to be worth doing, we need to receive a volume of questions that is higher than just like stuff that we could answer on social media.
Absolutely. And it can be about writing, it can be about role-playing, it can be about tabletop games in general, it can be
Honestly, at this fucking point, it could be about comic books or Dragon Age.
Yeah, like...
Or even, like, offhanded jokes about Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to answer that shit.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, it can be, any question. If we feel that, yeah, sure, I'll answer that. If we got a good answer, we'll talk about it, I think. So, yeah. But anyway, non-cliched game starts.
Yeah, so that's kind of a weird thing to bring up. So, like, what exactly are we talking about when we say non-cliched game starts?
Well, first we must define the parameters of what the cliche is.
I think we possibly also have to define what a game start is as well.
Yeah, obviously. The game start it's the start of all scenarios that will run with this group. It is
the beginning of the campaign itself, which is honestly a very important part of the role-playing experience as a whole. Because it's the establishing context. It's generally like a position where all of the original characters in the campaign are going to be meeting up with each other and having their first impressions of each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which, I suppose, makes it confusing for many that so many DMs are just utterly apathetic about the whole thing.
I mean, you might have a great middle, you might have a great end, but you're like, well, I need to get all these characters in one place under the same roof and get them talking to each other.
Which can be difficult, because often players will create an unexpectedly diverse band of characters,
Absolutely.
And it's like, why would these people ever work together?
I know, yeah. Which is my scenario in a nutshell. But yeah, like, a game start should, in theory, one, bring multiple characters together for maybe the same reason, not necessarily, but it should put multiple characters in one place at the same time to the point where it's convenient for them to work together or where they might as well work together, basically. Yeah. So that's why taverns are quite popular, because people go into taverns. And
I find that the tavern thing is kind of flawed, because it's like, not all characters would have a reason to be in a tavern.
Well, yeah, that's why it's flawed.
Upon meeting each other in a tavern, there's no real guarantee that those people would then decide subsequently to work together.
You kind of need some world building and context behind the tavern, I feel. It can't just be a tavern. Maybe it is a place where adventurers meet and go to get jobs. Maybe it is an agreed meet-up place by a specific person. Maybe it's a point of interest in itself. Maybe there's some wacky shit going down.
Bear in mind also that whatever context you choose for the beginning of the game is going to be the first impression on your players as to what exactly is normal within the universe that you're setting up. So, for instance, in Obsidian's Pillars of Eternity, there is an adventurers guild kind of thing, where there's a big tavern that essentially acts as a base of operations for all adventurers, and Pathfinder, I think, does something similar with the Pathfinder Society. The thing that your players then see, like the first thing that they see upon the game starting, is institutionalized adventuring is a thing in this world. That there are... it's not just sort of like a thing that ephemerally happens within the populace based on like the humans and demi-humans relationship to the wildlife or something. It's actually sanctified within social institutions like guilds or private companies.
Yeah.
People are able to speak about it frankly. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but then of course you have to pay attention to the effects that would have on what does and doesn't make sense in your world. So possibly another reason why people like the tavern meetup start so much is because it implies basically nothing about the world that you are in, except that alcohol exists.
Yes.
Which is an assumption that I think can be generally made quite safely. But, because for instance, in the tavern world, it might be that adventurers' guilds exist, and that you're just not in one.
Yeah.
But that doesn't have to really like come out to be a thing until later. But it might also be that it's completely not a thing, and that adventuring is like a thing that happens, but it's not, right, people don't talk about it. It's not a thing that people recognize as like a social institution.
Yeah. I should point out at this point, depending on the genre of your campaign, the less cliched starts are going to be. Like, it's very, like, do you know what I mean? You know,
a little.
Yeah, you know, like, it's very difficult to kind of come up with a cliched start for a solid horror campaign. And there are only so many starts for a superhero-based game, for example. You know, that kind of thing. It's like, you know, people are more familiar with sci-fi in general and fantasy in general, and that's where most cliched game starts come from. Though 90% of all post-apocalyptic campaigns start with, so you're out in the wastelands.
There's also, obviously, if you're playing something like Call of Cthulhu, then you all meet in a bar, depending on what era you've selected for your game and where exactly in the world the game is set, might be more contentious and opening than expected. Because if your game is set during the era of Prohibition in the United States, then obviously that implies a great deal not only about the setting itself, but also about the characters who exist in that start. And you might find your players objecting if some of them just wouldn't go to a speakeasy.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if you know anything about history, kids, not many people did.
No, I can't remember who it was. But I told this story last time I played Call of Cthulhu. I really don't remember who it was who's quoted as, like, he did a test. Like, he went to a whole load of major American cities to see how long it would take him to find a drink. And it wasn't in, like, Chicago. It took him 17 seconds.
No, it was in New Orleans, because I remember this story. It was New Orleans,
New Orleans, it took him 17 seconds.
Yeah, he got in a taxi, and he, like, asked the cab driver if he knew where he could get a drink. And the cab driver just went, hey!
He just went, right here.
Right here. It's just like, God damn it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, like, yeah, look.
But still,
there
might be either players whose characters would never be seen in a speakeasy, or who would, but don't particularly want to start the game there because, you know, they kind of want agency and control over, like, what kinds of speakeasy their characters enter and when, and checking who sees them and stuff like that, which might be relevant. Yeah. I mean, it's probably not, because you're going to have, like, Cthulhuid horrors coming after them very soon, and the laws of mere mortal men will soon be forgotten, one thinks, but it's nice to allow them that kind of stuff. Yeah. So in D&D, like, we're technically not off topic there, because we are supposed to be a general role-playing podcast, but I think, like, we were
straying slightly, I suppose.
Straying slightly, I think. In D&D and in other, like, fantasy role-playing games, starting in a bar there are a number of cop-out campaign beginnings, but definitely starting in a bar is the biggest one.
Well, I don't mind starting in a bar.
The one that annoys me the most is you're all part of the same mercenary group, which is why we did it in the skit at the beginning. But, but definitely, you all meet in a bar is more common than that.
Yeah. I will defend the tavern start and say that it's quite, it is sort of a good way to kind of go, right, this is generally what most of even like the people you're going to be into, like these are the working class folk probably, and this is generally, these are places that are, you should get used to going into, and you should get used to going into taverns, especially if that's like part of the thing.
Yeah, so the fact that you're in a tavern doesn't necessarily mean that you are a patron of the tavern, which is helpful, because presumably the reason why you're even there in the first place is to acquire information on quests that could be completed so that you can get paid if you're a mercenary, or just quests that can be completed for the good of the general populace if you're perhaps a goody two-shoes paladin.
Yeah.
Although a paladin entering a bar is possibly slightly suspect.
I don't know, like, I always sort of feel a little bit defensive of paladins, like, drinking and having sex and stuff like that. I'm just like, look, not every god is as unfun
this
as...
is true, like, since AD&D, the things that paladins are and aren't allowed to do have diversified a lot.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah, that's, paladins can have a drink if they want, and, they
in
just
Dawnsomber, if you're a paladin of,
responsibly.
say, Imashtar Omar, it's basically expected.
Yeah, it's just like, you should just drink responsibly. I think in Two Earth, because drinking is such, like, so ingrained into the culture of particularly the central countries, it's sort of like, yeah, it's expected, but I don't think even a monk would drink loads. Monks brew beer practically, so it's like, yeah, there isn't really anyone who doesn't drink unless they object to it on a personal level, because I don't know, maybe I like drinking and that reflects itself in my game world.
Honestly, speaking as somebody who doesn't drink and never has, I actually do not like role-playing people interacting with alcohol, because it almost always goes, like, further in depth than I can knowledgeably speak about.
Yeah. No,
like,
it's...
either when I'm playing or I'm DMing, like, somehow characters in the party will end up interacting with alcohol in some in-depth manner, and I'm like, oh god.
Oh shit, yeah.
I have no idea if I'm making this up.
Yeah, I remember complaining. So I was reading a fan fiction the other day, and I was complaining because a character kept buying had bought 7 glasses of wine, and I'm like, no one would do that. That's so expensive. If you drink a lot of wine, to just buy a bottle, because it's cheaper that way.
And
right?
then I, knowing as I do huge amounts about drinking and how it is performed socially, replied to your post asking, who drinks wine in a nightclub?
Which, to be fair, not a lot of people. But presumably some people, but I don't think nightclubs put very nice wine.
Probably not.
I don't know if it's something that they're
now I've got that bit of Hot Fuzz in my head.
Yeah.
Seen that bit? I mean, that I'm probably going to cut that out because that's kind of a spoiler for the plot of Hot Fuzz, which is a very good film that you should watch.
Yes.
So if me saying this now doesn't make any sense, it's because I cut out the thing that I said immediately after that.
Yeah. But yeah, meeting in a tavern. I think one of the reasons why I'm defending the tavern open is because technically that was my open for my campaign, but I felt okay with it because I had context
to be honest,
while you were
though,
all
that
going
was not like you didn't start with you all meet in a bar. There was a pretty big lead-in for for like a number of the characters involved. Like it wasn't done on playtime, but like we did catalog our journeys to the city of Kranzenfort and how we would have ended up in that bar.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in good company for like people who probably don't have any business speaking out against cliched opens, because if you remember, my campaign started with perhaps the 4th or 5th worst offender on the list. You all meet in prison.
Yeah, I don't know.
Now, you all meet in prison is kind of good, because the one good thing about prison is that it says almost nothing about the people who get put in prison, because when you go to prison, like, the people who put you in prison don't really care about the kinds of people that you would hang around with.
Yeah.
You're going to your cell, and if your cell has other people in it, you're going to have to get along with those other people.
Yeah.
The bad thing is that it implies that you have, like, your characters have done something that would cause them to be arrested.
Yeah.
So either something illegal, or in, like, more corrupt regimes, something that pissed off the establishment.
Yeah. Which is to an extent, I think, a good starting point for, less experienced players, but I think people who were like, hey, we're going to do a D&D campaign, and they're already thinking of their character, that can sometimes throw a bit of a spanner in the works. But for people who are like, oh, I guess I'll play a Dungeons and Dragons game, and then they're like, oh yeah, and you've been put in prison, they're like, oh, great, I can come up with something. I've got a starting point for my character. What crime did they commit? Why are they in prison? You know.
Those of you who have played the Elder Scrolls would know that that's actually like a tradition for them now.
Yeah.
The Bethesda, like, I think they have actually come out and confirmed that it's like not a running joke, but like a tradition, and they're always going to do it. That you will always be in the custody of law enforcement in some way at the start of the game.
Yeah.
And I did like that in Skyrim, when you're on the abominably unskippable cart ride, the other people in the cart do actually like try and make some suggestion as to what kind of crime you might have committed, and in most cases it's like some sort of fairly minor infraction. Like I always play Dark Elves in Elder Scrolls games, so what they suggested for me was that I had been attempting to the thing I don't quite understand here is I had been, I think, attempting to immigrate illegally, so instead of ejecting me from the border, they caught me, brought me further inside Skyrim and attempted to execute me. Which doesn't make a huge amount of sense.
No, yeah.
But, I mean, like, the good thing about that is that it shows you that the severity of your crime is probably not... Like, it's not on the level of, like, you didn't murder anybody.
Yeah.
You might subsequently go on to murder a lot of people because it's a fucking Elder Scrolls game, but you hadn't, up until that point, been confirmed to murder anybody.
Yeah. I do think that my issue mostly with the Skyrim opening is that it opens up in the most boring forest in the world. Like, Skyrim is so interesting and you can find so much shit, and it just opens up in, like, the most boring bit of woodland ever.
I feel like once you get to Helgen,
yeah,
it's kind of more evident that the reason that they did that is to try and show you that Helgen is like a backwoods shithole that nobody like willingly lives in.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Just in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though it's like not honestly that far away from Whiterun.
Yeah, but I think why a lot of, people don't like the prison openings, because it is very typical. And then, you know what the first mission's going to be. It's going to be getting out of prison. It's going to be escaping.
Which is good for a DM, because the DM is like, okay, these people are going to bond over their prison escape. They're going to have to work together. And they might form connections that are strong enough to overcome, like, any natural animosities between them.
Yeah.
Long enough that they would, like, form lasting relationships and be able to, like, continue on as a party without having to worry about my character would not associate with these people, which can sometimes happen.
Yes.
And that's a fair concern.
Yeah.
But given the significance of the opening to the campaign as a whole, I really feel like you could do better.
Yeah, I think,
Now, I will try and be fair to myself. I have done 2 prison breaks as part of the campaign I am currently running, and the one at the beginning is a lot more exciting and well developed than the one that happened in the middle. Like, the one at the beginning is set in this giant, ridiculously architecturally designed death prison that is held together mostly by magic and perched on top of a tiny spire of stone in the middle of a gigantic crater in the snowbound tundra south of civilization. So it's an interesting prison, at least, as compared to the second prison break, which was like basically a police holding cell.
Yeah.
It was not very interesting at all. It was mainly like the logistical means of getting out of that prison that was causing the players difficulty, rather than the horrors that they might be. Like the prison itself in the beginning of the game was essentially a dungeon.
Yeah. Which I think is the problem with a lot of prison starts, is they're very basic designed prisons, which I guess can kind of go a bit into like dungeon designing for a minute, but like in fairness to it,
if you're gonna do the prison start, but you're also gonna make the prison a dungeon, there kind of has to be a reason for it. Like, this is the entire game premise of The Legend of Grimrock. The whole idea is that you're in like a really sadistic prison that is also like an automatic execution machine. But the idea is that if you manage to get out of the prison, then you earn your freedom. And there's like a weird caveat I suppose slight spoilers, vague spoilers for people who haven't finished Legend of Grimrock. There is a weird caveat involved in the dungeon, which makes the people who oversee it assume that nobody will ever get out alive. Basically because if anybody ever does, the dungeon will stop working properly. So you think they must assume that that's like a thing that encourages the players to go further into the prison in the hope of getting out, thereby securing their own doom by encountering the monsters that live in it. But honestly, the Legend of Grimrock plot is basically one of the only ones that you can pull without like having to bend over backwards to explain why there's like 3 levels of dungeon in your prison, because otherwise that's not incredibly maintainable.
No.
That's not a good thing to have in your prison. Who would have that? Who looks at a prison and thinks, this could use more completely random and workplace hazardous threats that might kill the people,
I know.
either staff or inmate.
I know, it is
here.
a health and safety nightmare just waiting to happen, which is what really we should take away.
It's like if you stepped out, like in a real prison, if you stepped out like into the general common area onto like a life-size version of the set of fucking Robot Wars. And that was just a thing that you had to deal with in your everyday life.
Yeah, it's just like a normal thing.
They just do that. Like that's the kind of prison that you're talking about if you want your prison to be like also a dungeon, but also want it to be like a functioning prison. And in Dawn Summer there is an explanation as to why this is the case, but it's not a particularly good one. I basically did the prison of Pit Splinter because I wanted to like a location I could put a whole load of like Ravenloft shit in.
Yeah.
Are there any other cliched openings? I'm really, really not fond of you are all in the same mercenary company. Because I think that, and this may entirely be based on my perception of what a mercenary is, but I think that forces a lot of character development on the characters in question.
Yeah.
Pretty much immediately.
Yeah. How did you end up in this mercenary group? How do you feel about working for this mercenary group?
Well, like, first of all, it says you are willing and capable of working with all of these people in a formalized professional relationship.
Yeah.
Which, depending on how you view such relationships, either means you don't have to like them as much, or you have to like them a lot more than you otherwise would. Or it also means you are prepared to accept money for killing people and endangering yourself.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily the case at all, but there's a lot of character creation options for characters who are thrown into adventuring basically by circumstance and just sort of can never get the momentum down far enough to leave, which can work for like constantly progressing campaigns.
Yeah.
I think the thing that annoys me about this is that it basically wipes away any like non-professional character origin that you could have for your adventurers. It's like, this is your job. And I'm like, what if I don't want to have been thrown into adventuring, like, by it being my job?
Yeah.
What if I'm not cool with the idea that I would willingly consent to this being my job at all? What if I'm an adventurer, like for instance, Star Wars. Let's talk about Star Wars.
Yeah.
In Star Wars, which we talked a little bit about last week, so if you listen to that podcast and you haven't yet watched Star Wars, we already spoiled it for you, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker decides he's going to go with Ben Kenobi to Anchorhead when he finds out that his aunt and uncle have been murderized and turned to skeletons by stormtroopers, because there's nothing left for him on Tatooine anymore. So he goes ostensibly to answer Princess Leia's message. To be honest, like, that particular part of the start of the film seems to be like very tangentially, we're going to go and do this thing, but we're gonna like faff around a lot on the way. Everything we do is ostensibly still in aid of this goal, but we don't talk about the goal that much. And it's like, okay, I mean, I guess I believe that. But so, like, he decides that he's going to go and do this because he doesn't really have any reason to stay on Tatooine, which he doesn't like. And in fairness, the novelization of Star Wars A New Hope actually makes this a lot clearer, because there is a scene in that was cut from the final film, which is where Luke actually goes to Tosha Station and talks to his friend Big Darklighter, who turns up later. And Big says that he's going to leave the planet and join the Rebel Alliance, and Luke is having a whole load of like daydreams about not being a moisture farmer on Tatooine, essentially. So if you already start the game with Luke and Han and Chewie and Ben all on the Millennium Falcon, and they're all flying around the galaxy doing Han's job, and it's all of their job, it's like, what the fuck? That's not how Star Wars goes. That's not... And, like, it makes assumptions about the characters of Luke and Ben. Like, Ben Kenobi wouldn't do that. Wouldn't just, like, go around being a smuggler.
No.
That's not his deal.
Yeah.
But if your DM starts out that way, it's like, well, I guess this is my job.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can come up with like some weird contrivance as to why exactly you're accepting money for doing this. Like maybe it's you need to go along with these people anyway, and you might as well get paid so you can eat on the way. But even then, it's like, no, that's not cool. I don't like you're all in the same mercenary group. I think it's lazy, and it really takes a lot of agency away from your players when it comes to character origins without them like bending over backwards to meet you.
Mm. Yeah.
So, we've whinged a bit about the problem.
Yeah.
What can you do instead?
I think there's always, and this requires a bit more work on your part, DMs, but that is what we do. It's work. It's the idea that there is a problem or a mystery, and these people are going here specifically to solve it. Not necessarily all as a group, they just all happen to be interested in this one particular thing, and that does require a bit of work. It requires you to kind of know the characters and talk to your players and think, okay, well, what kind of start do I want to make?
Honestly, something you probably shouldn't be that afraid of doing is talking to your players before the campaign begins about exactly what kind of start they would like to have.
Yeah.
Because remember, if your only basic requirement for them beginning the campaign is that they all have to be in roughly the same place and acquainted with each other before they can start working together, it's not particularly like taboo to like ask the players how they would like to meet up.
Yeah.
And try and field some ideas from them until you try and pick like whatever's going to make the most people happy.
Why would you be here? What would bring you to a place like this?
Now, bear in mind, of course, that it would probably be remiss of us to talk about this subject without mentioning that we are aware that if somebody comes up with a new campaign opening, and especially if that campaign opening gets sanctified into a published scenario, and a whole load of people see it and think, oh, that's a good idea, that's better than all the cliched stuff I've been doing, and start doing it, that opening itself will also become cliched.
Yeah.
Like, this is basically unavoidable.
Yeah, that's
you shouldn't
the thing
necessarily be afraid of doing what everybody else is doing and like not being a special hipster self. I read an article. Well, I didn't read an article actually. I read a headline of an obviously trash article from the Daily Telegraph recently that talked about how avocados were no longer an amazing, fashionable health food. And all I could tell from like reading the subtitles on the start of the article was that what it was essentially saying is avocados aren't cool anymore because poor people can access them. And I'm thinking, that's not, wow. Fuck you, Daily Telegraph.
That does sound like something the Telegraph
Which is not particularly surprising
yeah.
because the Daily Telegraph is a rag, let's be honest.
Yeah, the Daily Torygraph more like, God.
I mean, like, they try and maintain some decorum as a rag, but they're a fucking rag.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the worst.
No.
You know, they're not like the Daily Mail and the Sun that just straight up make shit up. I
mean, I feel like the Telegraph is largely for people who believe that too many poor people read the Daily Mail.
Yes, yeah. You know, but it's you know, like, they've got a bit more honesty to them, but it's, you know, still. Yeah, I work in a library, right? And there are certain papers that we've had to strike off and we can't get anymore because we feel they lie too much.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Daily Mail lies a huge amount.
We collect 3 newspapers and some local newspapers at this point, but 3 national newspapers we've agreed. Yeah, they probably tell the truth most of the time. So, we won't name any names, but suffice to say, we don't get the Sun, we don't get the Daily Mail.
Well, I mean, I think that's a given.
Yeah,
you've probably said enough.
Yeah, but you know, yes, we've stricken some from our records.
So, coming back to the original point, we do know that whatever idea we come up with won't remain amazing and fresh and new forever.
No. And look, not all tropes are bad. Just because you're doing something that seems a bit cliched, it's not the worst thing in the world, because maybe the rest of your campaign is amazing and original, or maybe you managed to turn this cliche and make it fresh and new.
It certainly hasn't hurt either of our campaigns too much.
No, I don't think so.
So I think with that in mind, if we're going to come up with a new opening on this podcast, rather than attempting to do something that's just fresh and new in the sense that it hasn't really been done before, we should instead attempt to come up with an opening that addresses the problems that we see with other cliched openings, because those cliched openings definitely have their strong points. Like we've talked about how the tavern and the prison homogenize the experiences of the player characters so that they can expound on their backstories. Which is good. And I suppose that the benefit of the mercenary company start is that it immediately contextualizes the actions of the PCs. It's immediately, this is something you are both willing and ready to do, and you are searching for an opportunity to do it, and therefore party meets quest. So
one of the ones that you've said you do when you introduce new PCs that I really liked is the sort of you've been trapped as you've been.
Shall I talk about the Dwarf Lord Mountains?
Yes.
Right. This is not a game start, but it is a character introduction. So maybe we can start with this. I ran a scenario in my Dawn Somber campaign called Whispers from the Stones, which is about the abandoned Dwarf Lord Mountains, which are, in terms of design, think about the dwarven city of Orzammar from Dragon Age. Now imagine it's the Mines of Moria, and it's just like completely deserted and like nobody lives there. The major problem with this dungeon was that a lot of people were going to die in it, and that meant you had to introduce new characters, but the dungeon itself was a closed system. The doors shut when you come in, and the only way to get out is to go all the way through the dungeon and come out the other side. So it's like, how can you introduce new characters in a system nobody is really supposed to be able to get into? And I'm like, well, at the very beginning, I can get away with like making characters slip down holes on the surface of the mountain and like tumble down into like shafts, like appear from behind unseen walls, confused as to how they have been stuffed into this horrible place. And that's fine. But later on, further down, it's like, why would people suddenly appear here? And what I came up with, and this is something I had to talk to the players about first, because obviously it's a pretty big establishment of context on their character, so they have to be okay with it first. But what I did is essentially in 600 years before the scenario was run, in the Dwarf Lord Mountain, in the Citadel, in its final waning days, a method of imprisonment, of punishment for crime, which included trespassing in that kingdom, was being turned to stone for about 10 days, you know. Which was not really used so much as a punishment, as more like, this gets this person out of the way until we can deal with them, because we've got some shit going on right now. And so what I decided is that every new character who came in above a certain level, level of the dungeon rather, it was, you were petrified for 10 days, and then like 7 days later the entirety of civilization within the Dwarf Lord Mountains collapsed. And you were never unfrozen, as it were, until now, 600 years later, where a group of adventurers comes along to the prison block that you've been erected tastefully in, and finds the stone to flesh wand that is kept in the supply cabinet, and starts trying to bring people back to life. I thought that was very ingenious, but obviously it immediately establishes some context on a character that, again, the player has to be okay with. Like, for a start, you're 600 years old. At least. Well, more than that. So your last memory of the world is from over 600 years ago, and obviously in Dawnsumber that is not huge, because elves can live that long, but it's still pretty damn big. The most obvious discrepancy would be that the country of Meslin is younger than the people who have been petrified in that room. So when they come out, they'll have no idea that there's now a new country full of humans and dwarves in that big old mint marsh that nobody wants to live in because it's shit. I also had like an elf who came out of the stone who was surprised upon returning to the Elven Empire to find out that it had an emperor again, that the Senate was no longer in control. And very angry to discover this, in fact. The fun thing that I always wondered was, like, I have like 3 or 4 of these characters like this. Which of them is going to end up being Steve Rogers, and which is going to end up being Javik? And I got answers to both those questions, so I was very happy.
Yeah.
So, obviously that was a means of introducing new characters. What you could do is have that be, like, the entire introduction. And it doesn't have to be in fantasy. You could do that in a sci-fi setting with cryonic freezing.
Yeah.
You could just have, like, all of you. If anybody's... Fuck, it's probably not a spoiler by the time I've got this edited. If anybody's been playing Fallout 4 recently, you know what I'm talking about. And to be honest, that's kind of fucked up, but it's funnier than I was expecting. Especially when you go on and, like, talk about it to people, and they're like, oh, shit.
Oh, you've been away a long time.
Yeah, and you just, like, casually bring it up in conversation.
It's like, yeah, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
From the...
I'm 200 years old.
Yeah,
I woke up recently.
No big deal.
This place looks largely like I left it, only dirtier and more radioactive. So yeah, you could definitely do that.
Yeah.
Admittedly, a modern day game, less achievable.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
But what you could then do is you could make, if you're going to have some, like, time travel shenanigans in your game, you could have it that, like, maybe the 6 or whatever of you were just all in the same place at the same time, and you're not even, like, connected. But you all get thrown forward in time or thrown backwards in time, and now you're in, like, you have to stick together, don't you? Because you're all displaced. You could do a whole load of things depending on what the context of the campaign is supposed to be.
You know, superhero games, I can think of multiple characters who've been cryogenically frozen and rewoken in various different ways. Sometimes have been...
cryonically frozen.
Cryonically frozen.
Cryogenics is for bits of people that are dead.
Right.
Cryonics is the, like, fantasy... Or at least that's what I was told by a woman who probably should have known that was the case. If it is not the case, please write to me and I will attempt to find out who that woman was when she came to my school and yell at her for teaching children things that are wrong.
Anyway, so basically you get put on ice. You know, I can think of, you know, multiple characters that's happened to. Some of them on purpose, like Bucky. Some of them by accident, like Captain America. I mean, that's really only 2 I can think of right now, because my mind's went a bit blank. I'm sure there's, like, a DC character who's been, like, frozen in ice spheres. I'm pretty sure Cave Boy is a caveman who was, like, frozen, you know, whatever. There have been characters who've had their brains inserted into robots later on. There's a lot of stuff you could do with, like, superheroes, because superheroes is superheroes.
You could do the plot of We're Back, a dinosaur story. But please don't do that. Because that movie doesn't make any fucking sense.
Aang from The Legend of Aang, Avatar. He got put on ice.
He did, didn't he?
He was
That's
a little...
basically the only thing I know about Avatar. I've seen, like, images of him being, like, pulled out of a giant ice crystal or something.
Yeah.
So that's probably the case.
Yeah. But that's one I remember, yeah.
Oh, here's another one. If we're going to be mucking around with time travel. Sarkhan Vol from Magic the Gathering. Not Sarkhan the Mad, or Sarkhan the whatever the shit he was in Cards of Tarkir. Time-orphaned Sarkhan from After Fate Reforged, where he goes back and he stops Nikobolas from killing Ugin, and that means that the dragons don't die out, which means that his childhood is completely different and Sarkhan is going to grow up to be a different person and possibly not even be a planeswalker? Probably not, actually.
Oh.
But original Sarkhan who did the time travel thing still exists and is now back in Dragons of Tarkir continuity, which is very weird. Like, I didn't... he's just there, and he even calls himself an orphan of time. So if you're going to have time travel shenanigans, maybe these 6 people were all involved in some kind of time travel experiment, and now they are like orphans of time, and there are other versions of them out there who lived completely different lives, or something.
Yeah. I think, can I talk about Dragon Age for a minute?
I mean, if it's relevant, sure.
So, Dragon Age 2 has a lot of... It's a problemed game, but I like the story, and I like how non-cliched it is, because it's not about... Dragon Age Inquisition and Origins, to an extent, are subversions of the Chosen One narrative, aren't they, really?
I suppose.
Yeah, just by chosen by misfortune, essentially. Dragon Age 2, you are a refugee. You have been displaced from your home because it isn't safe anymore. Now, that does sort of run into the idea of you're giving your player characters already an inbuilt backstory of it wasn't safe for them to stay home. But I think that kind of makes sense, especially for a low-level camp, where you're starting at level 1. It would make sense that you wouldn't stick around in a place that was dangerous and you would want to go to a different country. And it gives them an unfamiliar area to want to explore, and it gives them a reason to adventure and get to know people and travel around.
So what you're saying is that players could be refugees?
Yeah.
That's another one that we could have.
Oh, yeah.
And then it doesn't really matter what your background is.
No.
Because you're still a refugee.
Yeah.
And it's very good, I think, for if you're level 1, because then it's like, okay, these people are not incredibly powerful, so they've had to leave their homeland or homelands to come to this place.
Yeah. And, and especially and for the DM it's good because you already have a bit of world building. World building. There's obviously a conflict or a war or a reason why they can't go back home right now.
And a reason why they would need to stick together as a community, and therefore, if they strike out on their own, as a party.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, it's not a bad start to So
So what are the issues that we really want to address with whatever we're going to come up with? We don't like the lack of acknowledgement of the agency of the players and the backgrounds of the characters that are inherent in many of the cliched game beginnings. So it's difficult really to come up with like an opening because obviously the best opening will try and interweave the existing backstories of the characters that you've come up with into the narrative.
I always like the idea of perhaps the opening of for whatever reason you're all together, maybe you all come up with that collaboratively, but the reason why you are adventuring is because of something bad the PCs have done in their past and they're on the run from it. But I would expect
even
that would be a very
Squad.
Yeah, Suicide Squad.
you could just be fucking Suicide Squad. Then you have to work together because otherwise you'll get murderized.
Yeah. You could be for an evil campaign. You could be the Secret Six. You all have to work together because you're the only villains who disagreed with teaming up together as villains, which I think would be really good. Yeah, we're the only 6 people who don't want to team up with the big bad, so we're gonna be our own thing. I guess we made a super villain team by accident. Whoops.
If anybody has ever read The Quantum Prophecy, you know that fucked up thing that you learn that happened like 2/3 of the way into the book? If your players all work together, they could be that. Then that's a perfect explanation for why they have to work together, even though ostensibly they hate each other and some of them might be evil and some of them might be good, except possibly they're all evil. Or maybe if you want to flip it on its head, they're all good instead, and that was the grand plan. Yeah. But in any case, they're keeping this massive secret from the world. Obviously, that works best in like a superhero campaign because then you don't really have to change the context very much, but you could probably modify it to fit another number of other things. Although the obvious problem with that is that the player characters, for that to be believable, do generally have to be very high level.
I think another one is, though this only works for, I think, the problem with this one is that it assumes that everybody has to play a younger character, and you're all in school together. You're all in Magic Academy, or you're all in military school, or thief school. You're all,
Summer camp.
You're all it's Hell Week and you're all going to join a sorority. I don't know, but you are young people entering something like an academy or summer camp.
Yeah, maybe. You could also have like, obviously the easiest way to just completely ignore the backstory but not, like, deny it or anything is to have all of these characters randomly be in the same place and then have something happen that makes them have to stick together. It could be some kind of, like, cataclysmic event, like the attack of Kvatch from the Elder Scrolls Oblivion.
Yeah.
That was pretty fucked up.
Yeah. Another one could be you're all trapped in a place together.
Yeah.
And you are the only people sufficient enough to break the trap and free everyone or free yourselves from this situation.
Do we want to try and pin down some concrete examples?
What? In, like, fiction?
No, I mean just, like try and come up with some.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the best one, the kind of one, would be the one that would take into account everybody's background.
Yeah.
So definitely we have assembled a super team of not the best of the best, but somebody from every discipline represented here.
Yeah.
Which, like, helps with the class disparity. Where it's just like, we've put together this crack team of up and coming adventurers.
Yeah. Assemble the Avengers, essentially. Yeah.
Except the shit Avengers who are level 1 and have not had a huge amount of experience yet. So it's
someone sees your potential, though. Someone has looked at you and went, they could be the hero that Gotham deserves. Why not? Let's give them a shot.
Sure.
You could do it like how the I say Teen Titans, but how the group in the Young Justice cartoon starts, which is literally you're all sidekicks and you've decided to just break off and start your own group together because you're sick of your dad heroes like being asses all the time to you and you want a bit of fucking appreciation.
Ooh, modern day campaign opening. All of you are contestants on a game show up until when filming is about to start, something horrible goes wrong and like most of the audience and the camera people and the presenter are all killed, and you have to work together to make your ways out of the building.
Oh, poor Alexander Armstrong. That would be an awful episode of Pointless.
I love how Pointless is the game show you immediately went to with that. Although, I suppose it does have a fairly good variety of people on it.
No, but like, could you imagine, like, it's all, like, starting, like, zombies running around, like, killing everyone, but, like, they're kind of, like, they're like the Deadites from, like, Evil Dead, and then it's, like, and then Alexander Armstrong's like, who's making it, so, let's see, answer to, who's making it out of here alive, and then it just, like, goes down, goes all the way to 0, and he's all like, oh, and then they all, and then, like, all the zombies run around and start killing everyone, and, like...
I can't remember if Pointless is serialized in, like, North America or whatever. It might be that people have no idea what we're talking about.
And then, like,
I feel like it isn't.
Like, Richard Osman's just, like, a head, but, like, he's still, like, able to be on the computer or whatever. It's, like, a head and, like, some arms on, like, the laptop.
You watch way more Pointless than I do.
I know.
Possibly it comes from you owning a television.
Yeah, and another good one would be a Deal or No Deal. Noel Fielding. Noel Fielding opens the box and, like, I don't know, like, a head crab just, like, latches onto him. He's like, ah! And then, like, everyone's, like, running around.
The most obvious one for the characters is having, like, some prior experience with each other as being in the Big Brother house, but then you have to, like, work with the stipulation that every player character is a total wank.
Yes, that's true.
Which might not be what your players want.
It's the first show of the X Factor live... It's the first live final of the X Factors,
and like everybody in like waiting to go on stage is like the only people not killed.
Yeah,
that's definitely the case.
Yeah, you're all in a Glee club, and you're in Britain's Got Talent, and then you go on like stage, and everyone is dead, and it's just like ah.
Yeah, that's like, great because then you're all in a school club, so it's like you don't have to like each other.
Yeah, and then like Deadeye, Simon Cowell, Deadeye, Amanda Holden. I don't know if Amanda Holden's still on Britain's Got Talent. And like Deadeye, David Williams. They'll like press the buzzers as like an X, and then they're all like, "That's Edom," and then they're all like, "Ah!" And then like, "Who makes it out alive?" Time to fight for your life, kids. I don't know why I went with a zombie campaign.
I feel like you're getting like way more into setting the scene of this beginning than its utility as like the start of a role-playing campaign.
I just like the idea of like popular celebrities as like semi-intelligent,
Slavering undead.
slavering undead. Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
sure.
know. It just appeals to me. I think, you know.
Sure. Of course, all of this only applies in cases where the premise of the relationship between the players does not have to be forced by the circumstance of the setup of the campaign.
Yeah.
Obviously, in cases where it's you're all soldiers working for. Is that how Delta Green starts? I've never played Delta Green, so I don't know if that's the case, but presumably you all work for the same people.
Yeah.
If you were going, I've seen a number of people suggest that they want to play games based on people working for Secure, Contain, Protect, which honestly sounds like a shitty campaign, because you're either going to die or something fucked up will happen to you.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you get put on detail with my favorite SCP, which is the Italian restaurant that makes people act out shitty plays where people might die. Go and look that one up. It's really good, and it's not honestly all that scary. It's just really well written, I think.
Yeah.
So obviously, and also I think we've talked about this vaguely before, the idea of a game where it's on television and you're the presenters of the television show. In that case, either you all like each other, or you're like Adam and Jamie from the Mythbusters, and you have a professional working relationship, but you don't really get on that well outside of work. But that will be up to the players to decide, but their relationship is already decided just because that has to be the context.
Yeah.
The whole reason that the cliched beginnings to other games are contentious is because that doesn't necessarily have to be the context at all. It's very, very open to be a context because it's assumed that this is a normal thing that people do, and there are any number of ways it could start. So, what else could you have? Generally, I've found, with my limited experience with Traveller, that you can divide everybody in a Traveller party into one of two groups. Well, technically one of three groups. There's the person who owns the ship, the people who work for the person who owns the ship, and the people who are taking passage on the ship that the person owns. And those three categories basically cover everybody's reason for being on the ship in the first place, unless you want to go for something like Star Trek. But it's if you just want to be at the start, you want to be a normal passenger cargo vessel. It makes perfect sense that you would have people who are just on your ship. This applies to 7th Sea as well. And presumably any other system that involves commercially traveling boats or spaceships. Either you're a civilian or you're a member of whatever military detail is on the ship, the Navy or whatever. Not the Navy, because you don't travel civilians on. You either work for the ship or you don't.
Yeah.
But both kinds of people have a reason to be on it.
Here's an idea. You're all in a place that's about to be the scene of a heist or a murder or something, and it's quite a bit obviously this requires a scenario, but there's multiple roles that the character could take up. Then are they a guest? Are they doing the robbing? Are they or the murdering? Or are they working here for the night or something similar to that? That's not going to work for every scenario, but it is.
All right, assume everybody in the party are the ones doing the heist. Why are you doing the heist?
Yeah,
do you
why
enjoy doing crime, or do you perhaps owe a lot of money to a crime boss who wants you to do a job for him, and you don't really have any choice if you don't want to get murdered? I feel that would work very well in Shadowrun.
Yeah.
Because Shadowrun is about
that is a great Shadowrun
the world being a shithole.
Yeah.
Where you do just randomly owe lots of money to people you would rather not commit crimes for.
Yeah. Tonight someone dies. You've all been you're all in a place and somebody's dead and you have to solve the murder. Why are you there? Were you working there? Were you there on a heist and it went wrong and someone's now dead?
Cluedo.
You're
a disparate number of people who are all invited to a party because the connection that you all have is the person who got murdered. Possibly you've never even met each other before and you don't like each other, but you have to work together to solve the murder, and then some contrived circumstance will cause you to work together further from that.
Yes.
Maybe you uncover that this murder was part of some sinister plot that you can't go to the police about. And you have to solve it yourselves. I mean, that could be a good start for a detective or crime campaign.
You've all been selected to be the sacrifices of a cult.
Yeah, maybe. You all independently woke up from the Matrix. It doesn't have to be the Matrix, but assume that like a large cross section of humanity is in some way like kept in stasis or something, and like just the 6 of you woke up, and because you can't wake anybody else up, you've basically got to deal with each other, which is kind of similar to the whole like waking up from being cryonically frozen or turned to stone thing. But again, throw these people together out of circumstance. Honestly, there is a reason why the cliches that don't really say anything about the characters of the characters are popular.
Yeah. You've all fell down a rabbit hole.
Are we like going full Alice in Wonderland here?
Well, not necessarily, but you've all, you've went from one world into another, and that leads to some very interesting things. Did you come from our world? Did you come from a different world? How did you fall down the hole? But it doesn't necessarily assume anything about your background other than maybe you're a bit clumsy.
You are all the survivors of a shipwreck.
Yeah.
Possibly multiple different shipwrecks if you're on like a desert island or something.
If you want to go a bit magical or mystical, you were all born on the same hour of the same minute of the same day, and your destinies are just always going to be intertwined, and you will always forever run into each other. Perhaps that is going into Chosen One territory a bit, but you're all fated at some point to be connected with each other.
I feel like you're trying to slot Sense8 into this podcast, but I've never watched Sense8, so I don't know if that's like the premise of Sense8.
That is actually the premise of Sense8, yeah. Sure, you're all Sense8s, why not?
I mean, that would be some funky gameplay.
That would be that'd be fucking weird. I think you can make it work, but it'd be interesting, to say the least.
I mean, going back for a moment, because I feel we didn't mention this at the time, to the whole you're all brought together by some form of organised crime attack being committed in a public place.
Yeah.
If you as a DM are going to have your players all play like the victims holding out inside from like a terrorist attack or a heist, that's another one of those things that we mentioned in like episode 8, was it?
Was it?
I don't remember. Whichever episode had that warning on it where we were like, check everybody is cool with this before you start, because that's a pretty harrowing thing, man. That is a real thing that happens to real people and is generally pretty scary when it's happening. And it's like maybe it would be cool to roleplay, but you should maybe check that like nobody's going to be severely freaked out by trying to play that the first time round. I think just as a courtesy. Yeah.
I think high-level campaigns greatly benefit from Avengers Assemble.
It is
cliche. It is cliched, but it is again.
Well, it acknowledges the backgrounds of the character. If you're doing like a one-shot but at high level, it's great, because then it's like, okay, all of these people are ostensibly like proficient in their field, but because they don't actually have a lot of like played background, it can be assumed that generally the way I do it is these people are very high level, which means that they're very proficient, but because they were just created as characters and they don't really have a huge amount of like background for them, they didn't get to be that proficient by doing anything like amazing or story worthy. Which means that compared to other adventurers, in terms of like being assembled like the Avengers, they're very accessible.
Yeah.
You can actually get hold of them because they aren't off going like restoring the Goblet of Kings to the chalice socket in the ice wastes or whatever. They're just like going around completing like pest control and guard duty and probably like more momentous things than that, but even then it's like local stuff that they could be picked up for. And actually that was the premise of my 12th level the Fortress of Carvehill Halloween scenario, which was that all of you people have been hired by Teb Horan, the administrator, for your variety of skills, and it's like the charlatan had convinced people that he was like this great archaeologist who could identify artifacts that came out of the mine, which was a thing that needed to be done because they kept digging up archaeological sites. And there's the monk who was the cartographer, and you got a guy who was just like part of the of security, but maybe like the head of security or something of that sort. And you could have all of those different roles then be filled by people who have stories of their own.
So yeah, I think we've thrown out a lot of ideas, but I think ultimately, if you as the DM have a really strong idea for what the first thing your characters are the first mission, the first scenario you're going to throw your characters into,
or even if
ultimately,
you have a long-term idea of how the campaign is going to play out, think about the things that are happening independently of the PCs
yeah,
in that campaign, and then think, what side effects of these things happening might cause a very disparate and possibly, animosity-filled group of random people to be just assembled. Maybe the players want to know each other before they start. That's cool also.
Yeah.
But then you can think, okay, would these happenings attract a group of people who already know each other and are prepared to work together? The answer's probably yes.
Yeah. But, ultimately, the sort of stronger idea you have for the beginning, the better that you can kind of lead your opening initial meeting into that scenario, I think. If you're going to start with, I want to start with a heist, maybe. Okay, well, maybe
it's a train robbery. Maybe all of you are passengers on a train.
Yeah, all of you passengers on a train, yeah.
And you're the people who step up. And then you have to, solve the train robbery, and then you have to report the train robbery to the police when you get back to the end. And then you go on to, the whole whatever else is going on.
Yeah. And one of the great things about players, not necessarily player characters, but players are always going to want to take action, hopefully. They're always going to want to be involved in the story, hopefully. So
if they don't, they're generally going to be pretty insistent about not taking action, and their inaction will also be significant.
Yeah.
At least at some point.
Yeah.
If you're the DM, it's probably best to force their inaction to be significant sooner rather than later, because it will happen, but it might not happen in a timely manner.
Yeah.
If you don't give it a bit of a push.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things that players generally want to have an effect on the world that you create. And it's good to show them that. So yeah. I think, we've said some ones that we don't like, and we've thrown out some ideas that we do like, and I think in summary, what would you say, Alex?
I say, if you're running a superhero campaign, you could do that thing that some superhero movies do now, where you assume that they're all part of the same team or have answered the same call, and you just drop them right into a boss fight with a minor villain in their lair, just as the cold open. I think that's us.
I think that is us, yeah.
So, yeah.
Remember, any questions you want to ask us for the Q&A, pop them below, send them to us on Tumblr or Twitter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All of those things would work. You can send me... Actually, don't send me an email. Don't do that. No.
No, don't do that. No.
Please don't. It would be convenient, but I'm not... No.
If you've been infected with the chat function on Tumblr, certainly feel free to use the chat function on Tumblr.
Jesus Christ, why are they... Yeah, sure. You can send... both of us have it. I know both of us have it now, because I got it and I gave it to Beth.
Yeah.
Which sounds like some sort of...
Yeah, my Tumblr dash has been itchy all day, Alex. God damn it.
Or at least that Reverend and the Maker's song about the STD.
Yeah.
Which never explicitly references the fact that it's about an STD, but it doesn't make sense if it's not about an STD.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you can contact us on Twitter and Tumblr. I am Cleaver Crummish. Mm-hmm. That is spelled below, as always. Beth is Baroness Bamf.
Mm-hmm. And that's both on Twitter and on Tumblr.
Yeah. You can use a hashtag House of Bards on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Obviously, use all one word. But if you're somewhere that allows tags to be more than one word, then split it up into words, because that's what we will check.
Yeah. So if topic suggestions, questions, or if you make us anything nice,
yes.
Send it to us. We would like to know.
I've noticed recently that a couple of people have started tagging the two of us into things that are vaguely relevant on Twitter and Tumblr. That is also cool, especially if there could be a topic that comes out of it.
Yeah.
Definitely keep doing that. The music, as always, was by Kevin MacLeod, and the credit for whatever background image I'm going to use is down below.
fucking Sir Killalot comes at you.
And you're like, oh shit, Sir Killalot's going to try and murder me before breakfast again. I sure do hate being in prison, and I will be a reformed citizen when I get out.
You try and go play pool in the common room, you have to fight Matilda. God. Oh, yeah.
You like go and line up for your meager meal, and like you sit down at the table, and they're like, oh, did you hear about Big Bazza? Sergeant Bash finally crushed him to death. He only had 3 months left on his sentence. It's very sad.